The Galactic Academy's biothreat detection system had never malfunctioned in its 300-year history. So when every alarm on the Eastern Wing began shrieking in unison, Administrator Vex Thor's 3 hearts nearly stopped. Apex Predator detected. Threat level. Catastrophic. All personnel evacuate immediately. The corridor erupted into chaos. Students from a dozen different species scrambled over each other, their survival instincts overriding years of civilized education. The Zenthari, with their crystalline exoskeletons, shattered classroom windows in their panic. The blob-like Quentari squeezed through ventilation shafts. Even the usually stoic Draknor, apex predators on their own world, fled with their tails tucked between their legs. Through the observation deck, Vex Thor watched the security feeds with mounting horror. The sensors weren't lying. Something was triggering every biological alarm they had. Heat signature, optimal hunting temperature. Movement pattern, confident, unhurried, the walk of something that had never known fear. Biometric readings, forward-facing eyes, omnidigestive system, persistence-based stamina that could outlast prey for days. And then he saw them. 2 humans. Just walking. The female, Scarlet, according to her student file, had her data pad in one hand and a cup of some steaming liquid in the other. Her red hair was pulled back in a messy arrangement, and she wore the standard academy uniform with a complete lack of concern for the pandemonium erupting around her. Beside her, the male human, Alfie, was actually laughing. His brown eyes crinkled at the corners as he said something that made Scarlet smile, showing her flat omnivore teeth in what Vex Thor's species would interpret as a threat display. "They don't even realize," whispered Vex Thor's assistant, a trembling Plikian whose fur had turned pure white with fear. The humans continued their casual stroll through the abandoned corridor, completely oblivious to the fact that they had just caused the largest evacuation in Academy history. Scarlet took a sip from her cup, some earth beverage called coffee, Vex Thor recalled from her admission papers, and checked her data pad. "We're going to be late for xenobiology," she said, her voice picked up by the corridor's audio sensors. "Professor Thelnak hates it when students are late." "To be fair," Alfie replied, adjusting his backpack, "we wouldn't be late if you hadn't insisted on getting breakfast first. I'm not facing a 3-hour lecture on Quentari reproduction cycles without caffeine, Alfie. I'm persistent, not masochistic." Persistent. The word sent a chill through Vex Thor's spine equivalent. Humans were persistence hunters. Back on their death world, Earth they called it so casually, their ancestors had literally walked their prey to death, following them for days until the target collapsed from exhaustion. It was the hunting strategy of nightmares. "Sir," his assistant squeaked, "should we tell them?" Vex Thor watched as Scarlet paused to examine a holographic display of the Academy's molecular structure, pointing out something to Alfie with academic interest. They looked so harmless, so young. The female was barely into her 20th solar cycle, the male perhaps a year older. But the sensors didn't lie. Every biological marker screamed danger. Their homeworld had gravity 1.5 times standard. They were walking around in what would be a crushing workout for most species. Earth's oxygen levels were toxic to many species. Humans breathed it like it was nothing. They had survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, predators that should have eaten them to extinction. And perhaps most terrifying, they had clawed their way to the top of their food chain without natural weapons, without armor, without venom, just their brains, their stamina, and their absolutely insane refusal to give up. "The system is working correctly," Vex Thor finally said, his voice hoarse. "Humans are apex predators. We just forgot." It had been easy to forget. Humans were so friendly, so eager to learn, so quick to laugh and help others. They packed bonded with anything. There was a human in the agriculture department who had somehow befriended a genetically engineered pesticide-eating fungus and named it Steve. But underneath that friendly exterior was something forged in Earth's crucible of evolutionary horror. Scarlet and Alfie reached their classroom door just as Professor Thelnak, a brave or foolish Zenthari, emerged cautiously from a supply closet where he'd been hiding. "Miss Scarlet, Mr. Alfie," the professor said, his voice crystals chiming with barely suppressed panic. "You're here." "Yeah, sorry we're a bit late," Scarlet said apologetically. "The breakfast line was crazy long." Alfie glanced around the empty corridor, then at the still flashing red emergency lights. "Did we miss something?" "Why's the alarm going off?" Professor Thelnak looked at the two humans, these descendants of persistence hunters who had conquered a world that tried its hardest to kill them, who had looked at the stars and decided they belonged there too, who now stood in his corridor drinking stimulant beverages and worrying about being late to class. "A drill," the professor lied smoothly. "Just a drill. Please come in. Everyone else is running late." As the humans entered the classroom, still chatting about their weekend plans, Vexthor finally shut off the alarms. A message began broadcasting across the Academy's neural network, one that would become legend in the years to come. "Attention all staff and students. Humans are apex predators. This is normal. This is fine. Please proceed with your regular schedules and try not to trigger their pursuit instinct by running. Repeat, do not run." On Earth, Scarlet's mother would have laughed if she'd known that her daughter, who still called home crying about homesickness, who had once nursed an injured bird back to health, who couldn't watch sad movies without tissues, had just been classified as a catastrophic threat. But Earth had taught humanity a fundamental truth. The most dangerous predator wasn't the one with the biggest teeth. It was the one smart enough to make friends with everyone, kind enough to help anyone, and stubborn enough to walk through any obstacle to reach their goals, even if that goal was just making it to xenobiology class on time. Alfie pulled out his notebook, grinning at Scarlet. 20 credits says we can make Professor Thelnak faint when you raise your hand." Scarlet grinned back, her forward-facing predator eyes sparkling with mischief. "You're on." In the observation deck, Vexthor poured himself a strong drink and made a note to update the Academy's threat assessment protocols. Being an apex predator, he was learning, wasn't always about fangs and claws. Sometimes it was about walking through a panic like you owned the place, coffee in hand, without missing a beat. Humans, he decided, were terrifying, precisely because they had no idea just how terrifying they were, and that was probably for the best.